Part 1. The Silent Routine. Theo lived alone in a house perched near the edge of a quiet village, where mist curled like smoke from the riverbanks each morning. He wasn't a recluse, but neither did he seek company. His world was made of rituals: morning tea with loose-leaf chamomile, a walk to the edge of the woods with a hand-carved cane, evenings spent with his journal and the soft creaking of the wooden floor beneath him. He had once been a philosophy teacher, the kind who paused between thoughts longer than most students could bear. He liked the sound of ideas brushing past each other in a quiet mind. But years passed, and the classroom grew louder, until he decided to leave it behind. Now his students were the trees, the wind, the silence between bird calls. On the other side of the village lived Amara. She was 27, a soft-spoken illustrator who had returned to her aunt's home after years of living in the city. The city had made her bones hum too loudly. She missed the quiet. She missed the rhythm of things that didn't rush. She would pass Theo's house each day on her walk, sketchbook in hand. At first, they only nodded. Then, they waved. One day, Theo offered her a cup of tea without speaking. She accepted without a word. Thus began the slow building of their bridge. Their first tea together was under the cedar tree, the one Theo had planted decades ago. They sat on opposite ends of the bench, and though no conversation passed between them, the air was warm with shared attention. Part 2. Echoes of Stillness. Their meetings became routine. Theo would sit on the old cedar bench by the garden, and Amara would arrive with her sketchbook and thermos of green tea. They rarely spoke more than a few sentences. Sometimes they didn't speak at all. In the silence, something rare bloomed. They began to notice things the other noticed. Theo watched how Amara's eyes lingered on the way light touched leaves. Amara noticed how Theo would close his eyes whenever a breeze carried the scent of jasmine. She began sketching in his garden, flowers at first, then his house. Then, without planning to, she began drawing Theo's face, not with precision, but with feeling. The softness in his eyes, the wrinkle at the corner of his smile, the way he tilted his head when the world spoke softly. Theo would sometimes read aloud from his favorite books, Rilke, Woolf, Basho. Not entire chapters, just fragments. Amara would listen and sometimes draw what she felt instead of what she saw. A tree shedding words, a bench holding 1,000 echoes.
Part 3. The Language of Objects. Theo had always believed that objects could speak. A worn mug carried years of hands. A chair remembered the weight of someone long gone. One afternoon, he brought Amara a small box. Inside was a collection of keys. None of them fit anything anymore. "What are they for?" she asked. "Memories," he replied. "Locks I've lost, doors that don't exist. But I like to keep the keys." She took one, a small brass key shaped like a leaf, and tied it to a ribbon she wore on her wrist. "Then this one will remember today." Theo smiled, and something in him softened. In return, Amara gave him a small pebble she had painted with gold ink. It looked like a river stone kissed by sunlight. "This is for the space we share, even when we say nothing."
Part 4. Shadows from the Past. Amara began to open up in small pieces. A story here, a memory there. Her father had been a painter. Her mother had sung lullabies in a language Amara no longer remembered. Her last relationship had ended quietly, like a song that faded without a final note. Theo, too, shared bits of his past. A wife who had passed, a son who lived oceans away. regrets folded between pages of books he no longer read. They shared not to explain, but to understand. Each story was a beam placed gently on the growing bridge between them. They spoke the difficulty of loving without possession, of grieving people who were still alive, of silences that healed rather than hurt. One day, they built a tiny sculpture together, using driftwood and stone. It stood near the garden path, a shrine to their quiet understanding. Visitors never asked what it meant. Theo and Amara never explained. Part 5. Rain and Reflection. One afternoon, a storm rolled in. Instead of sitting outside, they stayed inside Theo's study. The rain made the windows weep. Amara looked around at the shelves, at the photographs, at the lives that once filled the room. "Do you ever wish for more time?" she asked. Theo paused. "I used to. Now I wish for fuller moments. Time comes and goes, but presence, that stays." She wrote the line in her sketchbook. Later, it would become the caption to an illustration of the two of them sitting beneath the cedar tree, with time written as leaves falling all around them. They read poetry aloud, shared stories of storms they had weathered, and as thunder rumbled gently beyond the windows, the space between them felt warm and complete. Part 6. The Bridge Named Trust. Autumn came. Leaves turned to fire and gold. Amara was offered a residency in a far city, a prestigious opportunity. She told Theo one morning as fog still curled on the ground. "Will you go?" he asked, voice level. "I don't know," she said. "Part of me is already gone. Another part isn't ready to leave." They sat for a long time in silence. Then Theo said, "Bridges aren't made to hold us forever. They're built so we can cross when we're ready." Her eyes welled. "Will the bridge still be here if I come back?" "It will," he said. "If not here," he tapped his temple, "then here." They exchanged no farewells, only the weight of a final shared cup of tea and the knowledge that some connections aren't lost, only quieted. Part 7. Departures and Remains. She left in late October. The trees were bare, the wind colder than usual. Theo stood at the gate and watched her disappear down the winding path. He didn't wave. She didn't look back. They both knew goodbyes didn't need sound. Weeks passed. Theo went about his routines. He added a new ritual, writing letters to no one. He would leave them on the bench, and the wind would carry them off. One day, a small package arrived. Inside was a book of illustrations. On the last page, an old man and a young woman sat beneath the cedar tree, a ribbon with a key tied between them. The caption read, "Some bridges never break. They just grow quiet until crossed again." Theo smiled. He placed the book beside the sculpture they had built. Part 8. The Return. Years passed. Theo aged gently. His cane wore smoother with each walk. He still made tea for two, even if one cup remained untouched. The bench beneath the cedar tree bore the imprint of long conversations and longer silences. And one spring morning, just as the first buds returned to the garden, Amara did too. Older, quieter, carrying a suitcase and the same sketchbook. She didn't knock. She just sat on the bench. Theo emerged, saw her, and said nothing. He sat beside her, handed her the second cup of tea, and the bridge, old and unseen, welcomed the weight of two minds once more. They talked about where she had gone, about the people she had met, about the exhibitions she had held, but mostly they sat. The wind moved between them like an old friend. Part 9. A Garden of Conversations. In the weeks that followed, they tended the garden together. Theo showed her how to prune lavender without wounding it. Amara taught him how to mix watercolors with natural pigments. They painted garden stones and wrote lines of poetry on them. Visitors began to leave notes on the bench. "What is this place? Who are you? I sat here and felt something I couldn't name." They never answered. The place answered for them. Epilogue. The Bridge Eternal. When Theo passed, he did so with the window open and a cup of tea cooling beside him. Amara found his last journal. On the final page, in neat handwriting, were the words, "The bridge between two minds is never built in haste, but when it stands, it can outlast time." She buried his ashes beneath the cedar tree. Then she built a new bench, and every spring she painted a new key on a stone and placed it in the garden. She never explained the keys to anyone, but those who came and sat and stayed in the silence, they understood. The end.